One of the most exciting and intense college basketball games of the year is getting a rematch in Kansas City. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. It is survive and advance time in the Big 12 tournament, and I'm hoping that is a phrase that we'll be using throughout the entire month. That's survive and advance, because that's what it's all about here in March. The Bears get a somewhat convincing at the end double-digit victory over the desperate Cincinnati Bearcats, led by a big second half. And mainly they were led by a big second half from their talisman, RayJ Dennis. And I'm going to tell you about how he put the team on his back in this one. And then it's time to look ahead, because it's Baylor, Iowa State tonight, 8:30 again, prime time, semifinals. This was one of the best college basketball games of the regular season, and so much intrigue was within that game that we'll need to recap it and also look ahead at how dominant the Cyclones were against Kansas State and how Baylor can attack them in that semifinal matchup. But looking first at this game against Cincinnati, I mean, it was another slow start for Baylor. And I'm going to kind of start with, I guess, the negatives here. And that is you just can't have these slow starts every game. You can't have that in March. It's going to catch up to you faster than you might think. And this was not a one-game thing. I know there's the excuse out there that Baylor, hadn't played yet, and Cincinnati comes in with some momentum, having played. This is now the third game in 3 days. And that's true. That is true. But this is not a one-game thing for Baylor. We look back to the last game of the regular season. Tech down 16 at one point in that one. Go back to the game before that. UT down 14. Kansas was pretty nip and tuck. You didn't have a big deficit there. TCU, you played terrible in the first half. You were lucky to keep it close. Houston, you were down 16 in the first half. Like, you cannot keep digging yourselves these holes and come out and expect to come out of them in March. You can't do it. And I thought it was going to catch up to them in this game. They end up falling behind 10 really quick, and they're only down by 2 at the half, but they're just not playing good basketball whatsoever. They had no semblance of an offense. RayJ looked lost out there that first half. We're going to talk more about his performance in just a few minutes, but it's so imperative that you cannot keep doing that. And honestly, the most frustrating part about it for me in the first half, and this isn't against the player necessarily, but just the fact that Langston Love wasn't playing. Because to me, as someone who is an ardent, I guess, hater of the Big 12 tournament, I was looking at this as, okay, we'll get some of the young guys in there, but mainly, which I talked about in yesterday's show, it was to get Langston Love some more reps with these guys, get back into game speed with some games that don't not matter, but is it going to sink you if you lose, right? And then I'm looking at the first half, and Langston Love's got sweats on, and I'm like, what are we even doing here? I was like screaming at the TV. I'm like, why don't we just forfeit this game? I don't want anyone getting hurt here. I only wanted this so we could get Langston Love some minutes. And I know that's drastic, but that was like, oh man, like now what? Now we're just here to, I guess, chase a championship. And I guess that's good enough. But yeah, that was the thing that was bugging me in the first half, as someone who's just not a huge fan of being in the Big 12 tournament. Of course, I watch the games all day. I love Big 12 basketball, but I was looking at this one as one thing, and that was making sure everyone stays healthy, and within that, getting Langston Love back healthy and back to game speed. And obviously, without him playing last night, you don't see that. So didn't love that, but loved the way the Bears played in the second half. They came out guns blazing. The shots finally started to go down. That was one thing I wasn't necessarily worried about with Baylor. They didn't they didn't shoot the ball well in the first half. And part of it was, kind of the rust, but also part of it was, again, they weren't getting good looks. They missed a lot of threes, and that was more of the rust. They went 1 for 10 in the first half shooting threes. And they 6 of 24, so 25% from the field in that first half. And it was just the free throws were keeping them in it, and they turned the ball over 10 times. And so again, part of that's rust with not all the shots going in, but when you turn it over 10 times and you're not taking high quality shots and you're really just not getting into your own offense, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to dig yourselves a hole. And one guy who kind of kept them on life support in that first half, as we all knew he would, was Caleb Lohner, who comes out playing more than he had in a long time. 5 points and 4 rebounds in that first half alone, and 3 of 4 from the free throw line too. So he was someone who kind of brought the energy for them, because Baylor was asleep. And I'm looking at Jacoby Walter, RayJ Dennis, Jalen Bridges, who combined to go 0 for 15 from the floor in that first half. I get that's not going to happen all the time, but part of it was they put themselves into a bad offense in that. So I'm glad that got corrected in the second half. Baylor comes out as a much different and more aggressive team. They shoot 44% in the second half as opposed to Cincinnati's 27%. They start making some threes. They get to the free throw line some more. They do finish with 21 turnovers for the game, which is not something to hang your hat on. I know there was some rust there, but I'm not using that excuse. I'm just not. One thing, good with the bad here. One other thing that really frustrated me, which has been kind of up and down for Baylor this season, is they just brought some real weak sauce to the rim last night. They did not go strong to the hole, and it was Jaden Nunn, it was Jalen Bridges, and these are guys who are certainly capable of more than that. That's kind of why it really frustrated me. But when you have going up against a blocker like Bandego, and he ends up with, I think, 4 or 5 blocks for the game without even scoring. But you can't bring that weak stuff in there. You can't. And it's not going to work against basically any NCAA tournament team. So that, I think, needs to change. I would also love it if Fran would just stop it. And thankfully, with Cincinnati going out, I can thank the Lord that we will not have to freaking hear Fran Fraschilla talk about Jizzle James's dad being Edgerrin James. We get it, Fran. Every time he makes a play, it is not, oh, he looked like a running back there, or, oh, moving like a third down back. He's like falling all over himself to say how great Jizzle James was on this breakaway layup. There's a lot of Patriots fan in me that's talking here, but I'm just so glad that we don't have to hear this anymore. I have no problem with Edgerrin James. I mean, the Patriots were the Colts' daddy, so I don't care about that, but it's just like, we get it, Fran, and none of his plays made him look like an NFL running back. Trust me, they did not. He looked like a good basketball player, which he is. Anyway, thankfully, we don't have to hear that anymore. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by one of our new sponsors, Robinhood Retirement. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with that 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. So get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscriptions fees do apply. And now for some legal info on that. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investment involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of that first 3% match. You must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years, and the 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, and is a registered broker-dealer. Today's episode is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV, the one I go to watch anything that I want to watch, because this is my destination and your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, it has these amazing viewing experiences, especially with those smart TVs and also with the Fire TV stick, which I use and even bring on vacation with me, that you can just plug into your TV and access millions of those movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So for when you're gearing up for this college basketball tournament, first the Big 12, obviously, and then the NCAAs, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. You will. And they recently created TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands and teams, all for free. And that includes all of us here at Locked On and those major pro leagues, as well as the college conferences, to keep you up to date in the wide world of sports, because there's a lot going on right now. March Madness, MLB is coming up, NBA, NHL, lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, anything you're looking for, great pet videos, they're all there. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out these channels, now is the perfect time. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Now, at the end of the game, Boog Shambi and Fran Fraschilla gave their MVP of the night to Jacoby Walter. And look, I mean, that's fine. Jacoby had a nice game, especially in the second half. He has 11 points, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc with 6 rebounds as well in 37 minutes, which is a little bit above his average. So good night for the freshman. He was one of the guys with the slow start in the first half. I don't believe he hit a field goal in that first half. As I mentioned, he and RayJ Dennis and Jalen Bridges did not. But the guy I picked as my MVP has to be RayJ Dennis. I mean, this team goes as he goes. And you saw it perfectly in this game last night. He did not have a good first half at all. And that was pretty apparent early on. And yet I look towards the end of the first half, where he actually sat for a couple minutes, the only time he sat in the game. And I was like, this offense, it was 2 minutes of chickens running around with their heads cut off. So yeah, RayJ did not take care of the ball too well in the first half, but when he wasn't out there, there was even less semblance of an offense. It was even worse than it was when he was out there. And that's what has kind of been a blessing and a curse really all season long. It's a blessing that RayJ is this good, but the curse is that they can't run an offense when he's not out there. They really struggle. We actually saw that a bit with Keontae George last year. I think RayJ is a much better facilitator, but their offense looked completely different when it was Adam Flagler running the point versus Keontae George. And you just don't have guys that can run the point outside of RayJ Dennis. Jaden Nunn and Langston Love have tried this year. It's not their game. But RayJ, when he's out there, for better or for worse, it is going to be better for Baylor, if that makes sense. Whether his performance is for better or for worse, it's going to be better for the Bears. And the side-by-side is just night and day for RayJ Dennis. Okay, first half, you ready? 2 points. 0 of 7 from the floor. 1 assist, 4 turnovers. Stinky, man. That is stinky bad. And I don't know if they just needed to wake him up a little bit at halftime, but that's one of the worst halves we've seen him play in a Baylor uniform. Second half, he was in command, baby. 11 points, 5 of 6 from the floor, 5 assists, 1 turnover. And played some good defense most of the game too. And it was really him waking up when you saw that big Baylor run to go up 14 in the second half. In fact, I think they get to like 10 with a 3-pointer from RayJ, the only one he hit all night. That's not really his game, but he set guys up for dunks in the lane. He has a couple big patented RayJ Dennis layups in the second half. He doesn't go up that strong, but he's usually got the space that he doesn't need to worry about that. And the biggest thing for me was how he ran the offense in the last 3 minutes of the game. They got an offensive rebound with about 2.5 minutes left, and they were only up like 6, maybe 7, 6 or 8, I should say. And I'm yelling at the TV. I'm like, slow this game down, shorten the game. And it's something Baylor has not been stellar at this year, but has gotten much better as the season has gone along. And in terms of shortening the game with offense in the last 2 minutes when you have a lead, this was their Mona Lisa last night. They actually extended a lead in the last few minutes, which has been like pulling teeth for them. And you can thank RayJ Dennis for that, including those last 2 possessions. The last of which, the last real possession they had, was when they were kind of playing keep away. RayJ makes a tough pass to Jalen Bridges, who's on the wing. It gets there because they're so spaced out, and Jalen gives it down to Yves Missi for a dunk. Game over. It starts with RayJ recognizing the last 2 minutes of the game and recognizing the situation and just playing it to perfection. He did not put a foot wrong. And before that, I mean, they had a pick and roll. That was another Yves Missi dunk or layup in the possession before that too. So all the credit in the world to RayJ Dennis. That was senior leadership. And one thing we got to remember here, I mean, he's played in conference tournaments before, sure. He has never played in the NCAA tournament, which is something that I still have some worry about. As much as I'm a huge RayJ fan and I believe in him and I love the season that he's put together for Baylor, that is something that is a concern. And he's played in conference championships before, or conference tournaments, I should say, but he has not played in the Big 12 conference tournament. He has not gone up against teams with this kind of quality that Cincinnati have that are playing for their tournament lives. Let me explain. Of course, playing at Boise State and at Toledo, he is playing against teams that this is their only chance to get in the tournament, but ones that do not have the skill and the momentum probably that Cincinnati had coming into this game. And I think that affected him in the first half. But he was, as bad as he was in the first half, he was that good in the second half. And overall, defensively, I was just so impressed by Baylor down the stretch. I mean, this was a team in Cincinnati that beat Kansas by 20 in the round before. And the day before that, they scored 90 points. And you kept them under 60. When they needed a win so bad, you kept them under 60. And Lukosius, the only guy who is a high volume, really a high volume scorer for them. I know Skillings has had a good tournament, and Jizzle can give you some good minutes and get to the basket. But Lukosius is your knockdown scorer, and he goes 1 for 8 on the game. Am I right in saying that? And a couple of guys had that assignment, by the way. 1 for 8 from the floor, 1 for 6 from 3, 5 points. Jalen Bridges had that assignment, and RayJ Dennis had that. We saw mostly Jade Nunn on some of the other guards, and they're emptying their pockets in the hotel room tonight, and Simas Lukosius is falling out of them. They had them in the bag, and that'll win you games in March if you're keying on one guy and shutting him down. When you have the offense that Baylor can roll out, that's going to win you some games. So overall, can't help but be somewhat impressed by it. It's not one where I'm like, oh, we're going to win the national championship. But I will say this. The last time Baylor won a game in Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament was 2021. I'm just throwing it out there. That's all. It's been 10 years since they've won 2 games at this tournament, which they will go for tomorrow. But again, can't stress this enough. Cincinnati is a well-coached team with some good players out there that really hung tough all year. They were 5-8 in games decided by 5 points or less in the Big 12 this season. So, horseshoes and hand grenades, but they were there in the best conference in the country, what was supposed to be a rebuilding year for them. And it was a rebuilding year for them. And they were desperate as heck coming into this game. They're riding a high. They just beat Kansas by 20, and they've won 2 in a row. You hold them under 60 points, They don't have a field goal in the last 3 minutes of the game. You hit 4 of your last 5 and win by double digits. Yeah, that's impressive. That is absolutely impressive, man. And you are going to need to be even more impressive to win tonight, because those Iowa State Cyclones, man, they are no joke. Today's episode is also brought to you by our pals over at Nissan. And this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by those great friends at Nissan. And now, with the month of March getting into postseason basketball, each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. And last night, the Baylor Bears looked like the Armada. Okay, the big dogs, the hunted, and playing just knockdown aggressive defense for so much of this game. It's no wonder that they are expected to make a deep run in the tournament. The big guys, right? That's the Armada. And then I'm looking at a team like NC State, the Wolfpack. That's this week's Nissan Rogue. Okay, this team surprised the nation by knocking off Duke in the ACC tournament and going to the ACC quarterfinals and giving themselves a legitimate chance to sneak into this tournament. Okay, so go Rogue. That's exactly what the Wolfpack have done and have made them all of a sudden a very dangerous team going into this weekend. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. So you survived, you advanced. Now it's time to do the whole thing all over again, because waiting in there is the number 2 seed. By the way, chalked it all up. 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds. Those are your final 4 in the Big 12. As great as this conference is, it's heavy at the top, man. These teams are that good. And it's Baylor and Iowa State. The rematch that we know the Cyclones have been prepping for a month and a half now, since they faced off. I think that was the first weekend in February that those two teams met at the Foster Pavilion. It was as exciting as it gets in college basketball. 70-69 Baylor victory. The Iowa State buzzer beater is no good because it was just a half a second too late. The shot goes in. Everyone thinks the Cyclones have won, but it's waved off. The Foster strikes again. And of course, in that game, Baylor plays one of their best halves of basketball all season long. They score 40 points against a vaunted Cyclone defense in the first half. They're up 15 at the break. And then all hell breaks loose. Scott Drew gets his first career ejection, 20-0 run for the Cyclones. And then you all of a sudden have an instant classic on your hands. And now we get that again. Hopefully not that nerve-wracking, but hopefully the same result, a Baylor victory. And that gave a good lift for Baylor, who was still, again, mostly up and down, like they have been kind of all season long going into that game. And it did not break Iowa State whatsoever. They have been on an absolute roll since then. They have been firmly a top 10 team and the number 2 team in this conference. And they flexed some pretty good muscle against another desperate team in Kansas State last night. That was the game before Baylor versus Cincinnati. And K-State, like Cincinnati, a team fighting to get into the tournament, a very well-coached team, a team that's got skill, too much skill to not have won 20 games this year, I would say, and a team that had a deluge in the second half in the game before when they played Texas. In the quarterfinals, and they were missing a run against Iowa State in that game last night. They were down 7 at the half. They cut it down to 1, and then Iowa State just turns it on, and they do it in an odd way. I mean, they're not one of the great 3-point shooters, but they shot 7% from 3 in the entire game, 1 for 14. That is bizarro, man. They did shoot 31 free throws in that and held Kansas State to under 40% from the floor. I mean, that's obviously where they are, where they're at their most lethal is on the defensive end of the court. They didn't turn the ball over very much. They forced 20 from Kansas State and committed only 6. Iowa State's a weird team for me because I understand that is a very good basketball team. TJ Otzelberger is a very good coach. I really like Taman Lipsey. I love what all of them can do defensively. That said, I worry that they might be a Big 12 team that'll be on upset alert the first weekend because they just, like Houston, but with a little less talent, they go on these long stretches where they are ice cold and they don't have the offense. And on the flip side of that, they can flip a game on you by having great defense and garnering a 20-0 run like they did against Baylor the first time. So I do think they are a team that could get upset early, but they're not a team I want to play. Not at all, especially in the position that Baylor's in with Iowa State looking for revenge. But I mean, this is something we've talked about with Baylor all season long. It's no secret. It's almost cliche at this point because any coach will tell you this. It's glaringly obvious. But if Baylor can't take care of the basketball, that's going to be a long night and a long flight home, to be quite honest with you. I mean, this is a team that just forced 20 turnovers, and you gave Cincinnati about half of those turnovers. You had 21, which ties you for your season high, by the way. That was the Baylor of late January when they lost a couple games in a row. That's not the Baylor team we have been used to seeing the last month or so. And I said 21, and I'm not sure why, because it was only 15 for Baylor, but 15 is a lot. I don't know where I got 21. 15 is a lot of turnovers. You ideally want to be at like 10 or 11. So it's not drastic, but it's too many. And you saw it. The point still remains of half of them, they gave them turnovers. It was a lot like that Kansas game at Fog Allen, where Bill Self, even after that game, said, well, they gave us a bunch. They threw us a couple passes. And I'm hoping that that's a corner they turned in that second half. But again, they have been a one-half team for the better part of a month here, outside of that second Kansas game, coincidentally enough. So again, it goes where RayJ Dennis goes. He's not the only player out there. He's not the only impact player out there. By no means am I saying that, but he needs to take care of the basketball for Baylor to have a chance. But this is an exciting, exciting matchup. And now I'm of the mindset that house money, if you lose, who cares? It's not hurting you in the real tournament. We'll move on. But you've already won a game. You might as well win this thing. And Jalen Bridges, I talked about this on yesterday's show, but he had said, last year we looked just ahead to the championship. We just wanted to win the championship. And we didn't have the focus in the first game, which is alarming because their first game was against these Iowa State Cyclones. So they had already lost to twice in the 2023 season and then made it 3 times. And so hopefully they can, exact a little revenge and have that bad taste in their mouth. But then again, a lot of first-year guys on this team. Whew, there's a lot in that. Let's get a Baylor Bears victory tonight, huh? Let me know what you think about this matchup tonight. Drop that down in the comments below. Also, what you liked and didn't like from this game against Cincinnati and who your player of the game was. Mine was RayJ Dennis, but it was not the same as Fran Fraschillas. So drop that down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Thank you for making it your first listen today. And every day, we will keep you briefed. As long as Baylor goes in this tournament, we at Locked On Baylor will be here. Again, thank you so much for being such a loyal audience. I really appreciate all you guys, especially in this month of March. There's so many of you that have been with us the whole season, and now we're just getting the good stuff here in March. So appreciate it, and appreciate you guys who are new to the channel and following along too. We are the only place that is giving you nothing but Baylor athletics content every single day. That's not coming straight from the university. So we're really proud of that. Anyway, we'll be back soon with your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.